My name's Ben Chamberlain, and I'm hosting today in conjunction with Jens Hellberg, who is the Managing Director for TruckScience, and Tony Hodges also joining us. He's the Laws of Motion proprietor and agent for TruckScience in Australia. So chances are, if you're making an inquiry or talking to somebody online, it'll be either Tony or myself. So it's good to put a face to a name, I suppose, after all this time. And Tony and myself are still in lockdown, so we're working from the luxuries of the home office today. We're going to cover today basically, what the app's all about, which is about maximising payload and calculating axle weights. So we're going to pick a popular application. Most of you will be familiar with it. Demonstrate how to do the maximum payload calculation. It's actually far more simple than you might think. We're going to demonstrate importing a body, and I'm going to show you how to compare that final drawing with the competitor's product or a similar configuration. So there's a bit to happen in a short amount of time. So we've only got about 30 minutes to get through this whole presentation that I'll get started shortly. So main things we're really focusing on: load distribution over the front and rear axles. So that's key point number one. We're going to demonstrate how to import a body and fit to a chassis. We're going to calculate the maximum payload. We're going to closely monitor the compliance scorecard, and then we'll send that report of the drawing that we've done today to everybody after we've completed the presentation. So I'll just pop over to TruckScience App now. Okay, so you should all be able to see. Hopefully, that's a very familiar sight for most of you that have used the app. So my screen is just to the left of me here. So just excuse me while I look to the side. Now, a couple of things that we wanted to talk about just as we kick off there. It is a valuable tool, and most of the data and information that comes from it we get from the OEM spec sheets. So we really do make a big effort to make sure that the data that's going in is absolutely accurate. And if there are any mistakes in the spec sheets, then we try and notify the OEM. If we have a common sense approach to looking at the quality of the data going in, and we'll attempt to update the OE if there is a mistake in one of the dimensions or the weights or something that we find. What I'm going to do today is we're going to build a FUSO. I'm going to build a 14 pallet. That's something pretty common. Obviously, there's a lot of Freightliner and Mercedes-Benz salespeople with us today. We'd be happy to help out with a configuration on a Freightliner or Mercedes after this. But it's just worth noting that all current MY19 Freightliners are in the app in the database, and the ones launched last year at the truck show, as are the new Actros, Arocs, the Iconic, Unimog, and many of the Sprinter models as well from Mercedes-Benz. So there's a fair bit of stuff in there. Now, what we'll do is we'll get started here. So naturally, we're going to go with the FUSO. So I'll just point out a couple of the quick buttons on the side of the app here. It's obviously my saved calculations. So, whenever you're sharing amongst colleagues or peers, generally, or your customers, you'll make a saved version of that drawing in here. Calculations that are shared with me, often amongst a group, you would send your calculations or your drawings between each other, and then that could also include bodybuilders as well. And then in the resources tab here, this is an ever-growing section. We have 2 webinar recordings already. The axle weight basics, which is kind of what we're doing today, and the B-doubles and semi-trailers webinar as well. There's a couple of case studies in there that they might be helpful when you're talking to other dealers and bodybuilders that you might be trying to convince to get on the app as well. A few other explainer videos on particular topics, and then in useful documents here, these things are quite helpful. You'll find in the app that we use most of these commodity references, and then just lately we've added the links to all the VSB6 references here for all the sections in VSB6 that you might need to refer to with a customer, for example. So what we'll do now is get started. We'll click straight on the FUSO. Now I know what we're going for, and I presume when we're doing the drawing with the customer, we'd have a fair idea. So we're building a 14 pallet, which is going to go on a 6x2 fighter. As you can see, it's pretty quick and intuitive to navigate. There's nothing hidden there. This is the most current model. You can see we've referred to the spec sheet from 2019, and we're going to go with the auto 6x2. Now, just interestingly here in the keyword search, you can type in any version or any model you want for any vehicle without having to go through that individual list. So that comes in handy a little bit later on, and we'll show you where that becomes quite easy. Now, just having a quick look around the page. Obviously, that truck would look very familiar to many of you here. I'll just run around the outskirts here, get you familiar with the icon. So it is all very quick and easy to access all the features here. The home just takes us back to where we were, so you can select the vehicle. Our configuration, which is a page we're on to right now doing the drawing. We have the preview, which is also the report. So when you finish your drawing, you click on the preview, takes you to your report that will go through at the end. The save icon, share icon, they're pretty self-explanatory. We're on full screen, so that's good. The settings, our account info. As we go down this side, these are things that you'll toggle through depending on the drawing. So you have, if you note the weight table down the bottom, we can decide to look at various different elements of that weight table, or we can have a summary of all the weights together. There's a bridge formula, which for our market is probably not quite so relevant as it is in others. We have the center of gravity report as well. So you'll notice that each item is tagged, each major item is tagged for its center of gravity there. There's a turning circle icon, so you can do a inspection, obviously a check on the turning circle. There's no requirement here to do any other calculation. Once the body's on there, obviously, or the wheelbase changes, then you need to make sure that you're within regulation, within spec. So the regulation drawing is there as well. Now there's two views. We have the side view and we have the top view. So you can preference either, but while we're doing the configuration in early days, you just stick it in side view. You can see the detail on the chassis there. Obviously the more detail we can add there benefits you and your customer when you're obviously going through the drawing with them. So we're currently looking at a detailed view, which has all the dimensions and weights. When we go to simplified, which it just limits it down to the overall and your basics of wheelbase and cab back, center to axle and so on. So it's a little bit more fresh screen, I suppose. Doesn't look quite so cluttered. I have a warning triangle, and these notes are presented in the final report as well. So you'll see this again at the end of the session today. This little icon down the bottom here. This is one of the greatest things of the app that we are constantly being told it's basically get in touch with one of us three today actually that's on the webinar. So I'll see if Jens responds to us, and I'll see how long it takes. But generally, if you've got a question or an inquiry, then we'll get a reply pretty quick. If not, if that doesn't work, obviously you can pick up the phone, send an email, or as wouldn't usually expect Jens to be out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning in Ireland, but that would usually be Tony or me replying back to you pretty quick. So you can see, we know that provides a lot of support to a lot of dealers and a lot of bodybuilders in situations. So over to the left-hand side here, we've got the vehicle icon, adding body, the adding equipment. We have the vehicle payload, and then we have two trailer options. So obviously for this vehicle, that's probably not relevant, but when we get to the bigger vehicles, prime movers, B doubles, then you'll see how that plays in there. So the two tables at the bottom, we have basically the compliance scorecard. Now this compliance scorecard has options there that we can select depending on your state or the regulation base that you're using. So for today, we stick on national, and we have all the dimensions and all the vehicle weights here. So you'll notice fuel and crew, we add that to the vehicle with a full tank. And generally, when I go into my configuration, I'll start. This is the very first thing I'll do is I'll add 100 kilos as the base weight. So 80 kilos is entered in there. It's the ADR for a driver under the ADR, but given that most drivers probably a little higher than 80 kilos, or they have work boots, heavy equipment, clothing, a backpack, then it's a good place to probably just have a quick chat with your customer and explain that detail like this is important and it has an impact on the final drawing. Okay, so what we're going to do now is basically we're going to put a body on this. So we mentioned we're going to go with a 14 pallet. So we select the vehicle body tab, and you can see from this menu that there's a number of different bodies in there. So many of these are templates, and many of these will be already imported drawings that exist from a bodybuilder. And even under the other tab, you'll have a few more unusual or more specific types of bodies. And we have other sample type bodies in there as well. So feel free to have a look around in there. For today, we're going with a curtain, and there's two things that we'll note here. And the first part of this will be there's obviously a template. So many of you will have bodybuilders that will supply a drawing, or you'll be sitting with a customer drawing a particular dimension, maybe for a steel tray or a crane truck or something like that. But for this example, we're going to go with the curtain side template, and I'll show you how to make the adjustments to the measurements there. What I do want to show you first is the simplicity of importing a drawing. So we're going to do a bit of an example here, and basically what we're going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of a shortcut. Actually, we might just go back a step and show you exactly what the process is. So if I click on the body and I wanted to import, say you have a drawing from your bodybuilder that you've been using for years, and you only want to use him and stick with his bodies because they're good, he can send you a 2D CAD file. Just email it to you or save it to a Dropbox somewhere. You can import that basically by clicking on Import DXF. Now this is 5 steps. It's pretty straightforward. So generally, you obviously go and choose a file location. I'm going to shortcut and show you how we do it. So basically, this is where you come to once you've selected that DXF file and you import it into the software from your own hard drive. So this will come up on your screen, and this is the first step of the import. So if you watch the clock now, this will take about less than a minute. So we go to next. Basically, we're positioning the body on the XY axis relative to the truck chassis. Okay, so relative to the back of the cab and relative to the truck chassis. So the software knows those relative positions, and it's asking you to make the most appropriate position. So we just drag that around until we're happy. So I'd say, we want that headboard there, and the rope rails there gives us plenty of clearance. Then I'm quite happy with that positioning, so I'll click next. Now you might either have the physical drawing in front of you. You can compare this, or you can tell that the dimensions are automatically brought in from that file type. It's not a special type of file, just a CAD drawing, a DXF file, and all these dimensions are pre-populated because they're obviously pulled out of the file as part of that standard file type. So I'm not going to adjust any of these. We're going to leave these today. So we click on next. Now we make sure we're happy with that. That looks pretty good. You can call it, whatever you want to call it, and then you save it and you're done. So basically, that is now saved as example under my file, and I can go and share that with anybody I'd like, or I can keep it private. So what's important to note here is these files can't then be exported back out to another CAD file. So if your bodybuilder was concerned that he might be sharing something with you that could be shared around the web, that's not the case. Once they're in the software, that they can't be retrieved out of the software in another format to be shared. So that's a pretty important point to note for many operators. So I'm going to take this body off, and we're going to start with the template, and I'm going to show you just how easy it is to get started here. So I've got a fair few dimensions in my head that I'm comfortable with a 14 pallet curtain. So what I'm going to do here is just go through and make some changes to the dimensions, obviously being aware of the time that we've got, and see how good we can make this in terms of productivity and how much payload. So yeah, it looks like a pretty odd body shape for a 14 pallet at the moment. So what you can do is pretty simple. You can click on the body, the template, the dialog box will come in from the side, and then you can start to modify your major dimensions directly from this dialog box. You can see you have length, height, width. It has a masses tab, which you can also cycle between gross or absolute mass and linear meter. And there's a really handy book here that, particularly when you're talking to your customer, you can talk to them about the difference in weight. And with a 14 pallet, I'd be erring on the side of caution, probably going with a 5 or 6 mil floor, heavy duty construction. You might want to just make sure that you're looking at that body from the heavy end of the perspective if you don't have a drawing from a bodybuilder. So I'm gonna leave it at that for the time being, and be pretty confident that we can run a pallet jack or something, or 1 ton pallets in the back of that body. Now we can go back to the dimensions, and we can make these changes here, or I think it's a bit easier sometimes. We click on the major dimension in the drawing, and it pops up on a dialog box here. And I'm going to make this body 9 meters long. It's a pretty standard 14 pallet, and I know a lot of guys like to double stack these pallets, and so I'm going to go 2700 high. So that'll give us a good productive body to work with. Now, generally, rule of thumb is, unless you're otherwise told by a bodybuilder or maybe an inspecting engineer, I'd be inclined to leave the subframe and body floor heights as they are, as a point of reference. It's probably safe just to keep those dimensions and import a drawing from a bodybuilder that has a better dimension in the meantime. So far, we've got a pretty normal looking 14 pallet body there. There's nothing on that body that is really surprising. You can obviously see the payload. We're talking about 10 tons at the moment. The other thing to mention just up here, pretty important, and all Japanese manufacturers have a different figure here, is the cab gap to the back of the body. So when there's a figure in here, obviously FUSO, say 130 millimeters is the recommended cab gap. So I would be inclined to leave that. I certainly wouldn't reduce it. In fact, probably with my experience that I've had, I'd probably increase that to some extent. And I might put that out to 150 millimeters, for example. So the reason is, when we've only got a 6 ton axle, that might just give us a little bit of leeway at the other end of the drawing here when we get to start fiddling with the payload. Now you remember I made that driver 80 kilos, and from 80 kilos to 100 kilos. And we're just keeping an eye on this front axle here all the time, and making sure that we keep a very close eye on that compliance scorecard. Now I'm going to stick a tailgate on this. I know what I want. There's quite a few tailgate loaders already in here. Same with any part of the app. You can just type it in. It'll bring up the type of tailgate loader. And again, if you want a particular loader, if there's something that's not there, if you have the file drawing, you can import it yourself, or you can talk to one of us and we can bring that in for you pretty quick. So you see that drawing flashing orange, and it's going to change color very shortly. Obviously, that's given us a little bit of a leeway on that front as we've put that on there. So, I would be pretty happy leaving that drawing how it is. I know my rear overhang's okay. I've got probably a little bit of leeway in the body and the cab gap. So as far as I'm concerned at the moment, we're looking pretty good there with a total payload of 12,085. So last point to do here, just double check that is the maximum payload, because we're pretty settled with that configuration. Now, if you click on payload, it'll bring up the payload dialog box, and you have a few options you can go through. We've just gone with simple payload here. That's the default, and that assumes a water level load. So with a curtain, 14 pallets, something like this, that's probably a fairly safe assessment. You can always go then to detailed payload, and again we have a whole lot of different available payloads in there. I have individual pallets in there, and we even have the 14 pallets, different dimensions, set up as set. So I'll give you an example there. We might put 14 pallets on there that are pre-weighed in at about 800 or 900 kilos. So you can see, obviously, the app doesn't like that. The pallets are far too heavy. So we might just quickly change that mass of those pallets to 12.5 tonne, and we'll see how it likes that. So still a little heavy on the front, but we're assured that the customer says that's definitely what they're after. So you can click on the body here, put your mouse straight over it, and we might see how far we go. So we have to come back to 450, but you can see we can just move that body nice and easily on the body, on the chassis there, without having to do anything else. That's a pretty cool feature, being able to move around. But while you're doing that, obviously, we're going to have a look at running into other issues like our rear overhang and rear axle limit. If you're not happy with that, just click the back or undo, and we'll just go back to where we were. Might get rid of those pallets, because not a big fan. They're not working for me, so I'm going to go back to the water level load and demonstrate to the customer, what is the maximum available payload that he's got on this chassis at the moment. So it's telling us we've got 12,085 as the key mass there. So I'll just double check that all our dimensions are right. We might really try and maximise that and push it back to the FUSO recommended cab gap of 130. So we'll settle on about 11,500 there to 11,800 as our maximum. Now, if you were in Victoria and trust us, at the moment you probably don't want to be, you can select the Victorian mass limit, which gives us an extra 500 kilos under road friendly on that air suspension. So we're going to go and have another look, see if we can pick up any extra weight out of that. So there we go. We've picked up our weight straight away. Now we're just about at the end, so time's ticking. Just a couple of quick things I wanted to show you there just before we go to the report. While we're parked here, we've got a good configuration. We've got a pretty good payload, close to 12 tonnes. So I think that's fair. We know we could probably tweak that body weight down to about 2,700, but in this case, we don't have the bodybuilder's drawing, so I'm not gonna make a guess that I don't know. What I'm sure you would like to know is, how does that compare to somebody else? How does that compare to, let's say, the market leading 6x2 at the moment is the Isuzu FVL. So we're going to basically slide the FVL straight under this configuration and see what we get. It's pretty easy. We just go and click on the vehicle menu. So we take these two arrows, and that's basically the swap vehicle icon to say, let's find something else. Type in FVL there, and we go with the FVL Auto Long Wheel Base. That's the most current, the MI20. So that's obviously Isuzu's updated that not so long ago. So we're going to click on that. It's going to ask us, do we want to rename that as the Isuzu? Yep, because it's no longer the FUSO. And although they have 6.5 tonne on that front axle, they've actually dropped back by close to 0.5 tonne on that overall payload. So it's an interesting perspective. Now, when I change that, we have to add in the 100 kilo driver that we had on our truck as well, and then make it apples and apples for apples. And we noticed then that that the Fighter actually, although it has a lower gross front axle load, has a better payload now than the FVL Isuzu. So it is a heavier chassis. It does have a longer wheelbase, and really the 500 kilos over that front really doesn't provide any benefit. You can see here. So in that case with your customer, this is a great example where you can show them the vehicle that they're talking to you about, that they're competing with, and give them a proper example with no trickery. I suppose they can see right in front of their eyes what's happening there. So I'm going to swap it straight back onto that chassis we've been working with. It asks me, do I want to save, change it? Yep, I do. So that's our truck. We're back. I'm just going to change this back to national regulations again, so we'll lose that 500 kilos, unfortunately. Just adjust that, make sure we're right. Okay, so but basically we're just about ready to go. So I've got one last thing to do, and this is obviously as you're approaching the close, you've had the discussion all the way through with the customer. We're just going to check two things. We're going to make sure that we don't have an issue with our turning circle, so we're within the turning circle diameter, and that we have no warnings on here that tell us that we're outside the regulation. So in our notes page, there's a couple here that aren't cleared up. So we have body equipment added, so we put the template on, we modified that template weight. The body width at 2470, so it's obviously keeping us well aware that we're still inside 2500, but not by much, and that we probably need to consult AVE about the tail lift mounting procedure just before we go ahead. So we're going to assume that's all happened. I'm just going to save this drawing as in demo webinar. And so I'm going to call it our 14 pallet. Be easy. Now, if I wanted to right now, let's say I'd want to share that with one of my colleagues, and I want to get Tony to check it out. So we might ask Tony, before I forward it onto the customer, check out the tailgate position. And Tony might have a look at that for me, and he'll share that back after he's found time to have a look at that and say yes or no, or whatever we need to do. And then we'll go on and do the report. So the report's basically we're closing with the customer. We're comfortable that we've satisfied what he needs to do, and now we're providing him with the legal proof that everything we've discussed meets the requirement. We've got a vehicle that's built fit for purpose, and we've got a vehicle that meets all the regulations and rules in the state or territory that they're in. So let's call that file the 14 pallet again for the customer's perspective, and just going to basically assume that we're sending it to him shortly. What we have in the main view here on the first page is the outline of the vehicle like you've seen in the drawing with our dimensions table. So all the weights are clearly specified here. We also have the significant dimensions on the second page, and then we have the center of gravity and the weight breakdown. So those center of gravity points are there for reference, particularly for each individual component that has a certain mass. And then it helps to add up the component weight to give us each axle weight and a total gross. So you can talk about that. Or if you've got a list of toolboxes and cranes and chains and 44-gallon drums and other things on there, then we can see what we can keep or move around. And in the final section here is just the notes and warnings. So if there's anything not right here or anything that is outside of regulation, obviously it would appear. And whatever we add here also is going to turn up in that section there. So we're going to apply those changes, and you'll see here you might add some comments there, basically from the from yourselves that you add to the customer. You might put your phone number details or something there. You could even put some quoting details and figures, part numbers for various different things. You can add anything in that additional notes side to keep your customer well informed, obviously. So the last part of it really is you've got three choices. You can obviously print straight to a printer, and that prints out immediately. You can download and save that, and some people might download and save that and then attach it as part of the main document with the sale contract and share that with the customer. Or you could just email it to the customer directly from here while you're talking on the phone, or while he's sitting across the way from you at the desk. So that is virtually how easy it is, really. I mean, you can, Tony and I did a challenge the other day. We drew 6 trucks in 6 minutes in same application and emailed the results. So, you really can have success with this app very quickly. And from what we've learnt today here in the basics that we've gone through, I don't think there's an easier product on the market. And in terms of appeal and overall ease of use from the customer's perspective, I think you can sit there confidently, no doubt, with the customer and show them, what they're buying from you is the right product with all the correct, compliance and regulations, obviously thought of and met out pretty easily and pretty plainly. So what we've learned there, obviously, is understanding that load pointing, over the front and rear. We imported a body. We calculated maximum payload. We've looked at that compliance scorecard, and we have sent the report to an email recipient. So you'll each get a copy of that after the webinar. Now, there are, as I mentioned, many resources there. We're obviously growing that resource base, and we've got a whole lot more coming that should be there pretty shortly. So, once you get into the app, like I said, you can use Intercom to talk to us. You can check the resources menu. You can call us and email us. So our support system is there for you guys, available, almost 24/7, depending on the hours Tony keeps. A bit of background on myself quickly. So I've been in the truck industry for about 25 years, all my life, basically since my working career started as an apprentice mechanic way back. And I've done many types of functions throughout the industry over the 25 years. Worked at OEMs, Hino, Isuzu, and the Volvo Group. And I've done a few other bits and pieces as well in other industries, in automotive and marine. So I've got a wealth of experience in the product side, and in particular the Japanese truck market. Tony, who's with us, as I said, he's the owner of Laws of Motion. Tony's also an approved vehicle examiner. So most of the inquiries, and today any questions that you do have, Tony will probably answer. You can be rest assured that between Tony and I, the answers are coming from two highly experienced people from the industry that, if we haven't seen it or fixed it ourselves, then we'll be able to get an answer throughout the network for you pretty quick. The real purpose of the presentation is to give you an introduction to TruckScience. We're pretty excited about the product. Jens and his team work tirelessly and have been working on this product and developing iterations of it now for over 30 years, if you believe. It's a global product, and it has a very strong reputation in the US and through Europe, and also Africa and South Africa. So you can guarantee the questions that you've got are being probably asked more or less at the same time by someone on another continent as well. So a great amount of experience. There's a lot of years of truck knowledge have gone into producing TruckScience, and we're pretty sure that after today, you guys will be pretty interested, and certainly convinced that as a sales tool, this is the way to go. As I mentioned, Jens, as a managing director, Tony and I meet with the team once a week, and we provide feedback, based on market information and anything that comes up either through the app or through feedback from users like yourselves. And that all compiles to give us 4 updates a year. So we're obviously changing the app performance ongoing, and any of the small product improvements for vehicles and drawings, we do those on the run. So we managed to get those done pretty much every day. If you haven't had a free trial already, then please go ahead and do so. After today's experience, hopefully you'll be confident enough to navigate your way through. It wouldn't be a webinar without giving you some details on pricing. So I did mention to some of you today that we did have a special that we wanted to make an offer to people that join the webinar, and what that is, basically that's our standard pricing. You can see 1 user is $600 a year. 2 users goes to $900, 5 users $2,100, 10 users $3,600. So from a point of economics, when we're looking at our competitor, we know that we have a much better proposition there. And when you've seen the features that are available today, I'm sure you'll agree that for that sort of money, the value is outstanding. I'm positive the dealers that we've spoken to already have said that, and we know it's a fact, that TruckScience sells more trucks. So it's, if you're 1 user or if you're 10, we'll support you all the way through that subscription period, right through. No matter what you need, we can be there for you to help you, demonstrate the success of this product to your customer. So here comes a special. What we want to say today is, we're proud of the software. We want to forget about 2020. So we're going to fast forward your subscription. If you join today or shortly, we're going to fast forward that subscription, so you don't have to renew until January 2022. So it's basically giving us about 3 months or the equivalent of an extra user for free. So, we're going to send a email out to you after the webinar just to thank you and get a bit of feedback. But what we want you to know is if you sign up now for however many subscribers you choose to sign up for, you won't pay your subscription until January 2022. So that's 3 months subscription basically on the house. And we want you to be comfortable using it, and basically, use that 3 months getting to know the product into January, where you can then, basically use the product for 12 months under your paid subscription. And if it works out now with the dates, it'd probably be around about Australia Day 2022 that you'd need to renew your subscription. So I'm pretty much done. That's been a pretty fast 45 minutes. I haven't even stopped to take a breath. I hope there's something in there that everybody's found interesting. I'm confident that this is a far more user-friendly. It's a sophisticated package, and it certainly meets our customers' expectations today. If we're familiar with the other software that's in the market, and you look at what we've just done in 45 minutes, I'd be very surprised to hear from any salesperson to say that they can give their customer a better point of sale experience than we can deliver with TruckScience. So I'd like to thank you all for showing up, for spending 45 minutes to learn about TruckScience. We can answer any questions. We know there's a lot of you still on board there, so please feel free to fire the questions through. Yeah, I just think it's even if you wanted to talk to us after the webinar, or go in and join up the the trial, and you can give Intercom a go, see how quickly we can get back to you. But Jens and his team stand by this product. As we mentioned, it's got a lot of years of experience in it, and particularly in the Australian market. We're confident that this is. It certainly has the appeal and the sex appeal, and it's what customers are expecting to see now when they're sitting down talking to a salesperson in a new dealership. This is 2020, not 2001, and some of the software that's out there today, I think most of you will agree, is 2001.
We got a question there from Hiran. He's asking, can you swap a cab as opposed to a vehicle? And the answer to that is no. You swap the entire vehicle. We don't have that breakdown or that separation between the cab and the chassis, but we can add all the cab derivatives into the software. So yeah, you can kind of swap a cab, I suppose, is the answer.
So just on that, Aaron, the issue you have with just swapping a cabin out is that you'll have tear weight issues. So when you just swap out the graphic, for example, that won't update tear weights in obviously other products that are out there. So swapping out the entire model and putting a new vehicle underneath it will actually bring the new tear weights of that in as well. Now Mike's got a question there as well. With factory options, what we've had with the Mercedes range is actually Jens and Martin, who wasn't in the meeting today. We actually went out to a dealership. We saw your Actros that comes out with the Hilton tanks on it. So what you see on the menus are actually the Australian models. So the model that you see with the 700-litre tank and the 400 and the battery box moved, all this stuff is actually the Australian model that you have there. So if you have some factory options that you would like to add, additional bits and pieces, we have some users that have a whole range of accessories, PTOs, all different bits and pieces they want to put around the truck. You can add that on there. We don't have the full list of the Mercedes options, but that being said, that if you've got the weights and what that option is, then you can actually add that in. But yeah, the main thing is that the models come out basically as they leave the Australian factory or as they get delivered to you. So that everything you see on the screen there is Australian. I don't know if that answers your question there.
And I think again, just to back up Tony's comments there about visiting a dealer. We're all technically minded, so so you can throw anything at us. We can go and climb under a truck and measure something, weigh it, whatever we need to. If we have to do something in particular to get that configuration right, then neither Tony or I are scared to get involved to do that. So with some of those factory options, if they're not available, then we may be able to talk to the guys at head office about some of that data as well. So never say never, I suppose.
Just another thing there on the Australian topic, you'll notice that we have the different states. But this is a big thing that was asked for. So when we brought this software into Australia, that was actually a big part of it to make it. The biggest question we got was, how Australian is it? So we've worked fairly well with the guys at TruckScience to actually implement these different state regulations. Now, this here stems more than just the common stuff that people understand, like the 500 kilos for a tandem axle on the back, or if you have a single axle or drive axle, then you get your extra ton. Little things in there that a lot of people aren't aware of is that when you add a trailer onto one of these vehicles, you actually lose that exemption in Victoria. And so we actually allow for that. So you put the tow bar on, everything is still fine. As soon as you add trailers on, then it actually removes the exemption. So what we do is we go piece by piece through the regulation, and behind the scenes we add all those different exemptions when they are applicable and when they're not. So what looks like a lot easier on the screen as far as the user interface goes is actually a whole lot more behind the scenes than probably what you're used to currently. If anything new pops up, then we've got the ability to add that without having to worry about USB sticks or CDs or DVDs getting sent out and updating everyone's thing. As soon as something gets updated, it actually gets pushed out automatically. So once you subscribe, that's it. There's no more mucking around with having to make sure everyone's up on the same version. It just happens automatically.
There's a good question there from David about training. Tony or Ben, maybe one of you can answer that. He's asking what training will you provide?
Currently, as we are, and with the world, if anything, COVID has obviously forced a lot of people to do online things, webinars like what we're doing now. But the biggest thing that I find is that we're getting feedback on is our service. You'll see, some testimonials that come up. We've gone and done them over the last month or so, and they'll come out. But one of the biggest things that's come out from that is our service. Not only by clicking on the screen if you need some help. What actually happens behind the scenes when you click on the message icon, Apple Watches and stuff, they light up, our phones light up. Like as soon as you ask a question, we're onto it. If you need some training on it, personally, I'm happy to offer the training if you sign up for a subscription. If it needs to be a one-on-one, Zoom meeting or quick meeting or whatever it is that you need, and ask me specific questions to deal with your particular industry or your dealership, I'm more than happy to put the time in.
Yeah, so I think, David, if you guys are that interested, we'd talk to you offline and we just assess what your needs are and who is at what level, and then between Tony and I, we could come up with something. We've got a few templates we've already used, so like you said, we could do one-on-one, we could do the whole group, we could do specific models. Depends on what you need. So we could just talk to you about that individually.
Okay, so we've got David still typing a question there. Yeah, that's great, David. That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
So just a little bit to that. Obviously, Ben and myself have been in the industry for a long time. We're here, obviously, in Australia. What we're putting out there, without putting a pitch out, like we're not going to try to sell to a salesperson, but what we're saying is what we deliver. So yeah, we really appreciate that you've piped up and that you've grabbed a couple of licenses. Yeah.
And we're truck guys too, so you can't pull the wool over our eyes. You can't trick us. You can't offend us. There's nothing. So we're all in the same boat here. If you need something, if something's tough, if you're not sure, chances are we've seen it, heard it, or been through it. So just reach out and ask us. There's no dramas there. I think that's a wrap. We might call it a day, but look, I'll be in touch with you guys over the next week or so, or at least within the next few days, and get your thoughts on the experience and talk further about what opportunities lie ahead. Have a good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again.